All right. Hey, Dr. B.
Hey,
Thanks for coming to talk to me today.
thank you for having me.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you. And, I have great respect for what you and Ken and all the other first responders do at our first responder program at Princeton House. And before I get into all that, I'm wondering if you could just tell me what exactly it is that you do for us, who you are, etc.
Okay, I'm Dr. Bizzarro. I'm the Director of Clinical Services for First Responder Treatment Services at Penn. I started there in 2013.
So one thing that's really always been very cool, I think, about you and the whole team over there is that you guys all have your peers, right? You have your own experience working as first responders in military, law enforcement, fire departments, etc.
It didn't start that way. It's evolved to that today. In the beginning, it was just one person.
You.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess before we get to like how you started that service, I'm wondering if you could just tell me your story.
Okay.
Like how did you, I know you were in law enforcement, military, and then how did that lead to you becoming a therapist in the first responder treatment?
So in '69, I joined the military, U.S. Army Reserves. Spent 6 years. 6 years in the service. I think it was about 3 years into my military service, I took the test for the police department, Port Authority Police, became a Port Authority police officer. I think I was 22 years old at the time. So I was young, in the military, police, and I was single at the time. And it was not uncommon to drink and kind of party at that age.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, and especially when your shift was over, it was kind of part of the culture, Unfortunately for some of us, and myself in particular, that social use of alcohol became more of a habitual use. And as a result of that, as you know, addiction, one of the things about addiction is it's a thief. It'll rob you of anything that's really meaningful and important. And so consequently what happened was that social use became habitual use. And as a result of the drinking on a regular basis, it compromised my career, my marriage, wound up losing my career as a result of that, and wound up losing my family as a result of my addiction. It took me 10 years in that addiction before I received treatment. And I went away for treatment. And that was a game changer for me. I didn't realize at the time how bad it was. Just to kind of go back for a second, it got to a point where I was living in an apartment, mattress on the floor, shades drawn. I get emotional when I talk about this. I had a gun in my mouth. There was no point on going on. I didn't see a way out. Got arrested, divorced, lost my job. It was just bad. It was really bad. And I didn't have the skill set at the time to even recognize that. I was very fortunate that someone kind of stepped to me. That someone happened to be a cousin who was a Newark police officer. Anyway, that gun in my mouth, it felt like it was there forever. And the only reason, honestly, in hindsight, that I didn't pull the trigger is the consequence of my son having to live with that. And that wasn't something I came up with. I honestly believe today, in hindsight, that was an act of divine providence. And that cousin of mine gave me a book. That book happened to be a 12-step book. And as a result, I got into treatment, and everything changed. That was in 1986 that I got into recovery. Went back to school. got my bachelor's, my master's, started working in the field. Not in law enforcement or first responders. It's interesting how that all came about. So I get my bachelor's, I get my master's, and I realized that I needed more clinical. So I went for my PhD in Chicago, which was one of the greatest experiences and decisions that I made.
Awesome.
Which brings us kind of where we are today.
I want to go back to what you told me earlier about your own personal experience with addiction. And you said it got to a point where you had a gun in your mouth. I guess I'm just curious, what would you tell, or what do you tell other first responders who have found themselves in a similar situation?
I think what happens is you don't realize that that may be the end result of where addiction is going to take you.
It's
you're
gradual,
a social drinker. You don't, you cross an imaginary line, and the only really way you get to understand that you're in the grips of an addiction is when you try to stop, and you find that you can't, and then it's kind of like, oh shit, what am I going to do now? And there's a tremendous amount of shame and guilt associated with it. So you're not going to want to put a voice to it. You want to keep it a secret because of the shame and guilt. So consequently, what winds up happening is your life becomes unmanageable, and you start to see the unraveling and the unmanageability manifest itself in your marriage, in your relationship with your children, your performance at work. So it starts to really take a toll, and other people start to recognize that something is not right. What we've been able to accomplish today through our trainings, because that's a major part of how we battle the stigma, is if you see something that doesn't seem right with a colleague, ask the question. More often than not, we don't.
Well, what's the question?
The question is, hey, I noticed that you haven't been coming to work on time. You're late. You don't look right. Is everything okay? And you know, the real important question is, are you thinking about killing yourself? That's a really difficult question to ask.
Totally.
But it is a critical question to ask, especially with this suicide epidemic that the law enforcement community faces. I mean, we're talking about 180, 200 law enforcement officers taking their life annually. More cops die by their own hand than in the line of duty. Something's wrong. Something's wrong.
I was looking up some statistics for this talk, and it looks like about a 50% increase for first responders in terms of suicide, which obviously is something I was struck by.
They're more at risk for depression, addiction, PTSD, alcoholism, injuries on the job, pain medication has become a major issue now. Now all of a sudden legalizing marijuana. There's so many things that really kind of make it very difficult for a law enforcement officer to continue to function effectively when you're under such scrutiny.
I asked you, what would you tell someone who's in a similar situation to the situation you were in? And it sounds like essentially what you said was that you would encourage their supports to ask them the difficult questions. What if you could talk to the person directly? What would you say to the person who's in that dark place?
What I would say is that the secrets, not putting a voice to what's really going on, is a real barrier to getting help. So it's kind of like, it's really hard to say I'm struggling, I'm depressed, I'm drinking too much, my relationship at home is not well. Cops don't trust anybody. That's really the biggest challenge. So it's kind of like, how do we break that barrier of trust? Because if I tell you that I'm hurting and I don't trust you, because you never, let me kind of go back for a second. As a law enforcement officer, you never know where the threat's coming from. So everybody becomes a potential threat, which is really sad when you think about it, because you don't really get to see people for who they are. You're basically profiling people to make sure that either you're going to be okay or they're not going to hurt somebody.
The most important job that our brain has is to keep ourselves safe.
Yes.
Right? And then that gets amplified when you're a police officer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what happens is, I think it also becomes a blind spot for us. You can't really be that objective, because You're constantly scanning the environment to make sure you're safe and other people are safe. To get back to your question, what I did was I put a voice to the addiction. I took it out of the darkness and put it in the light. I basically said to myself, what do I have to lose if I tell you what I went through? If that story is going to help one other person, then I've accomplished what I need to accomplish. And although I had mixed feelings about it, the response that I received, having done that, just kind of supported the decision to do it. It was the best thing I ever did.
It's funny because as a first responder, I would imagine part of the job is getting accolades for being brave, right? And for people in those careers, I would imagine that one of the things that probably takes the most courage to do is something like what you did, which is being so honest about that struggle.
For today's police officers, the challenge was, if I come forward, how is leadership and administration going to embrace this disclosure? Well, they weren't very supportive. And for such a long time, probably up until maybe, it's in the last 15 years, we've really kind of broken through the wall, the barrier, the stigma. We've chipped away at it. So I think today it's a lot easier for a first responder to come forward to get help without any consequence or fear of losing their job if I come forward and tell leadership that I'm struggling with an addiction or depression or anxiety or PTSD and I'm not sleeping. There's more support today than there was. So I think what's happening is you're having more first responders come forward saying, hey, I need help. And there's also protection under the American Disabilities Act as well.
So part of it is that there's like legal protection.
There's legal protection.
Part of it is that leadership is more supportive of it.
Yes.
Which is great. I mean, it's awesome to hear that there's...
Plus our team, our peers, have a tremendous amount of experience in collective bargaining, union-related activities. So we're really good at protecting their job and getting them back to work.
Awesome.
That's one of our goals.
I guess a question that I had was, where is there still room for improvement in terms of stigma?
It's a great question. There's so much that we can do. And I think what we have done is the trainings. We have done probably 40, 50 trainings, 5, 10, 15,000 law enforcement officers where we promote well-being. We're really good at helping everybody else, but when it comes to taking care of ourselves, I got to be honest with you, we're not real good at that. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to flip the script here. You go to the gym, at some point your body kind of responds, right? You start to feel good, the endorphins kick in, hopefully you're committed, you're disciplined, you continue to go, you see results. Why would you think the same principle wouldn't work for your mind? So I'm a firm believer that if we change your thinking, everything changes.
I'm laughing because I use that analogy all the time.
I don't have to change the situation. So if I change my thinking about the situation, ironically, the situation changes. So we really, we train, we teach them that it's critical that you bring your best version wherever you are. You have that responsibility to take care of yourself, and it's really challenging. They struggle with that.
Yes.
They really do. But today, 15 years later, more people seek treatment. So we know we're breaking the stigma. We're putting a voice to it. It's not a boogeyman anymore. It's out in the open. It's not a secret. It's not in the closet or hiding under your bed. It's there.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, I think you're finding out that more people are, willing to come forward and say, hey, I need help. It's actually not a sign of weakness. It's just change the script. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to say I have a problem.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about too. I think if I'm going to think sort of stereotypically about this population, right? Because actually I've found I have a lot of friends and family members that are first responders, and when I tell them what I do for a living, they're actually pretty curious and open about it, more so than I think you would the average person might suspect, right?
This younger generation is very different than the generation that I grew up in.
But again, if we're thinking like stereotypically about this population, I think the average person would say there's like a suck it up mentality, right? How do you kind of break through that as like a clinician working with?
Well, that suck it up mentality really doesn't work. It's like I'm putting a mask on. I'm not really addressing the issue. I'm kind of just covering it up. And you know, in psychology, nothing goes away. It's going to find a way to manifest itself. So if I don't address the issue, eventually it's coming out. And probably at the least opportune time. And I may not be equipped to deal with it when it does. So, you know, in the law enforcement community, firefighters, you know, primary dangers, secondary dangers, those are the issues. The primary dangers are the dangers I face every day in doing what I do. The secondary dangers are the consequence of doing what I do. The depression, the anxiety, the PTSD, the domestic violence, the alcoholism, the addiction, all of that is the result of the primary dangers.